My name is Shelly and welcome to Higher Conscious Thinker. You can find more information and resources at www.higherconsciousthinker.com. This episode, we're going to be defining the understanding of consciousness. And I do apologize now. I do have a podcast. However, I downgraded to the free version. Now, this is my hobby. I don't have a full-time career of this. This is just something I'm very passionate about and I've always been passionate about. However, I always want to make my stuff free because I want to reach out to people. I want other people to reach out to me and share these experiences. It's all about connecting. So I decided to do these YouTube videos. That way they can stay on. I got a lot of emails saying, hey, what is the deal? Where did all your podcasts go? Why did you delete them all? What's going on there? And it's just because I shifted to a version and unintentionally I did not know it was going to delete it within 90 days. So I'm still going to do my podcast. However, each episode will be deleted within 90 days, but I decided to do these YouTube videos. That way, if you ever wanted to look back, these YouTube videos will always be accessible. Unfortunately, you'll have to look at my face or what have you. Well, you don't necessarily have to. You can just sit there and press play because my videos are pretty boring. I wish I was an artist so I can make all these graphics, but I'm not. I apologize about that. So just use your imaginations. So today, once again, we're going to talk about defining the understanding of consciousness. Now, consciousness, it's also termed as the hard problem. And the reason why is because it's one of those things that are beyond human comprehension. It's something that we're never really going to grasp. Like scientists are not going to peg it. Hey, it's this part of the brain that produces consciousness. You can't grasp it in your hands. You can't hold it. You can't do anything about it. You can't say, okay, well, it's produced by this. We can produce consciousness. We just produce consciousness in a lab, for example. And also, the way the term has been used throughout history, every term evolves as a language evolves. It means different things at different points, different times, with different understandings in relation to the observers of that time. And also with consciousness, it's various types, stages, phases, etc., all indicate awareness, a state of awareness or state of alertness. However, the way that here at Higher Conscious Thinker, I'm going to define the definition of consciousness to mean an elevated state of awareness of the body and the energy systems that make up life and existence. And the way I use the term, I call it an infinite consciousness. Okay, this is energy that cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms, meaning that right now, our infinite consciousness is trapped, if you will, inside our physical bodies, inside our beings. And then upon death, it will be released. It'll still continue. However, it's going to be continuing in a different form. So let's get into that discussion. Now, when I talk about an infinite consciousness, you can correlate it to a soul, a life force, a spirit, whether you're religious, whether you're agnostic, atheist, whatever you may be. Okay, it belongs to another dimension. Can access and participate in the physical world, influenced by other energies as a physical life form in the physical world. Now, the reason why we can't go to different dimensions while we're in this life form, because once again, our bodies, they trap our infinite consciousness. Okay, so we can't really shift into a different dimensions or go live other lives because we're here in the physical world, and until death, then our consciousness is released in that sense. Now let's talk a little bit about dimensions, and we'll just have more discussions on dimensions a little bit later. But dimensions, they can intersect, they can interact, and they're all connected to each other, existing as one and as individuals simultaneously. So think of dimensions like cogs of a mechanism, okay? In order for the mechanism to function, all must function at one and simultaneously, but all have different roles to play. This one turns this way, this one turns this way. In our consciousness, it shifts in and out of these dimensions. And right now we are attached and confined to the physical life forms experiencing life in the third dimension. Now, also with our understanding of dimensions, now we're currently living in the third dimension, and scientists speculate, hey, there's 11 dimensions. Hey, there's an infinite amount of dimensions. Whatever the case may be, you can't necessarily have one dimension and not have the other, and that's what I mean by cogs on a wheel. In order for the third dimension to exist, you can't eliminate the first or the fourth or the fifth, etc. So when we die in the physical world, the consciousness part of us, the infinite consciousness that never dies, shifts into another form of existence because it's energy. And it can access other dimensions depending on the evolution of your life force. So why is consciousness a guessing game? And you'll see many scientific reports out there. Hey, consciousness, once again, it's located in this part of the brain, or this part of the brain, or this part of the brain, and that's simply not true. Okay, now our infinite consciousness, it accesses our physical part of the body as hardware, and we'll get more into that conversation later. But you're not going to take a chunk out of the brain and says, "Hey, I found where consciousness resides. It's right here." And if you see reports on that, it's completely bogus. So completely uh, understanding the science, all aspects of science, from anatomy, biology, genetics to physics, chemistry, etc. How energy works in your body and your and the way energy works is not nothing like that. Also, one report that really I was it just made my mind explode in a how is this possible? How is this published? Is there was a scientist, I think it was a couple of years ago, that said, "Oh, I discovered how consciousness works." Okay, how consciousness works, and it's through electromagnetism. Okay, well, electromagnetism is one of the fundamental forces at work in the universe. You have your strong force, weak force, electromagnetic force, and your gravitational forces. So, are you telling me these other forces of the universe, they have nothing to do with consciousness, just the electromagnetism? And to me, I'm not trying to be skeptical of it. I mean, I'm not trying to really put this in a doghouse or be that much of a critic, but that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was just thinking, okay, that's similar like saying, okay, well, I found the secret ingredient of pie. It's sugar. Well, not true, because there's other ingredients that make up the pie. If you like cherry pie, you like the taste of the cherries in there, you can have sugar-free cherry pie. Hmm? Or, it's just, there's more ingredients. There's more to it than just one thing. You can't say one thing, yeah, you're right, but you're also wrong about that situation. So be wary, and just because somebody says they're a scientist doesn't mean they know everything. Okay, first off, it's impossible for humans to understand the totality of life and everything, to understand everything there is to know about the universe, our lives, why we're here, what we're doing. Okay, everything is just a theory. So, also, the consciousness is a guessing game, a lack of human comprehension capabilities, and this discussion is highly theorized and based on history, science, psychology, and philosophy. So everything that I'm going to talk about, it's research that I've done, how I interpret the world, how I experience, how I theorize, based on not just my events, but I do a lot of reading and what other people have had to say who specialize in their fields. And the thrill of life is to seeking these answers to life's mysteries and the point of existence. It is something that we will never be sure of until we are in the state that requires us and allows us to know this information. And a lot of people that have near-death experiences, that they claim that um, yes, I've entered this field and I had knowledge of the universe, but then when I came back to my human body, it was taken away. And you might say, okay, well then they're just saying that. Well, it's natural for us to be skeptics, yes, and it's a good thing to be a skeptic. But when you have so many accounts that are talking about this different state, and for near-death experiences, NDEs, definitely check out the work of Dr. Bruce Greyson. He has a lot to say on it in his book After. He really dissects the brain, and what I love about Dr. Bruce Greyson is not only has he built the foundation, he went where other scientists were completely not able or willing to do because of the stigma. Because once again, consciousness, you talk about in the 70s, 60s, 70s, then you're being laughed at. Okay, well, you're talking about a supernatural thing here, and Dr. Bruce Greyson, he took the leap in the 70s, and he come from a scientific background, and he took this leap saying, you know what, there's something here and I'm going to study it. And what I really love about him is he's saying you're not doing science if you ignore these aspects and these truths. This is what's happening, right? You're completely ignoring that. So if you do not take in these human aspects, these human accounts of what the human experience is, you're not putting science together appropriately. And that's what he argues, and that's what, and he shows in his books the difference between epileptic seizure patients of the out-of-body experience versus an NDE out-of-body experience, how the brain works, how the brain functions, etc. So definitely, his work is 100% worth checking out. He is one of the leading scientists that have progressed the field of consciousness studies. So, really, all it takes is a discovery, an invention, a better understanding to alter one's view. Because when you think about it, when you're born into this life, you're born into the economic and social circumstances, your religious circumstances, and based on your geographical location, your nationality, your ethnicity, this is your truths, right? And the only way to get information is if you experience it, you read about, you use education to bring it in, and then you discover the world this way. This is how things enter your reality, right? You had to be introduced to this. And now, thanks to television and radio, that we are in the age of information, internet, that we can access different understandings, different perspectives, different realities multiple times a day. So a simple article can change your thought pattern depending on how the observer intakes and compares this information. And a single piece of knowledge can alter one's reality. And think about it like this. All it takes is one invention. So if you take the invention of the cell phone, let's say that you found a way to travel through time, you're the first person to do it, and you go back into the 1800s or the 1500s, whatever, and you take your cell phone with you, and you introduce this technology to somebody there. You know all the intricate details on how to communicate with it, how to set up towers, and you introduce this technology. It's going to alter their reality, alter their understanding. It's going to change the way they live and how they relate to the universe. Now, defining consciousness. Infinite consciousness is a part of the self that continues after experiencing life in the physical form. Okay? And it's a part of you that never dies, but incorporates the energy experienced from this life, connecting with other energies. Now, this is something that has been discussed through many works of scholarship. Now, whether you believe in past lives or not, and this is, I take the Dr. Bruce Greyson route, is what I call it, where I don't discredit or credit anything until something's fully proven or disproven. And that's one of those things that it's not possible to ever know. Now, you have these accounts on one hand, but then you also have to be skeptical about certain things. So it kind of weighs in on that. But past lives, I definitely believe in the possibility of past lives. And so when you think of past lives, meaning that, let's say that you lived in the 12th century, okay, you lived in the 18th century, and then you're also living in this century. So what this means by your life force incorporates these energies is your personalities, your likes, your dislikes, what have you. They can be imprinted on your infinite consciousness, your infinite energy, right? And you can take a little bit of this with you into the next life. And I think that's exactly why you have these kids, and it's usually under the age of 7 that some of these children, they're born with these vivid memories of what they call their past lives, and they see things, they experience things, and then after the age of 7, it kind of discontinues, it dissipates out because your reality is being altered, you're starting to shift in. But you might have traces of things that out of nowhere, you're like, oh man, that smells familiar, or it feels familiar. This energy, it feels familiar, etc. It could be you connecting with something you experienced from your past life that is still part of your infinite consciousness, or even personality traits that you have incorporated and carried on to your next life. So like I said, it's definitely a possibility. Now, upon death, the energy of a life form shifts into another dimension. And some people speculate it's the 5th dimension. They even labeled it as the 5th dimension. And I speculate it depends on the stage of evolution of your consciousness. Now, the reason why some people are so sure that everyone goes to the 5th dimension is because of near-death experiences. Now, the people that actually provide their account, they all have the same background. Like, they're all going to have different experiences, just like we all were. If me and you were to go to Paris and have a vacation, go out and experiencing life in Paris, we're going to write in our journals every day. We're both going to have different accounts, even though we might went to the same events, experienced the same things. However, we're both going to have a different event. And same thing, it's based on our reality or experiences. Near-death experience, so they're based on their reality, what they need to see, what their consciousness, infinite consciousness relates to, what they can see, how they're evolved. That's how their experience is going to relate. Some people see their dead relatives. Some people don't. They just see nothing but fields and plains of grass. But they all experience the same thing, this stage of infinite knowledge, infinite wisdom, infinite love, and time is no longer exists. For us, time has to be linear in order for us to make sense of life, in order for us to survive as humans. But in this fifth dimension, it's not. And just because there's so many people that have positive experiences, more, I think there's like maybe 2% that have negative experiences. But even the people that have negative experiences says they needed that experience in order to change what they were doing in their life, because and even they believe that they're going to go to a better place upon death, um, for example. So life is too amazing, mysterious, and complex for death to be finite, meaning we don't just die and rot to the ground. And that's what I believed, a few years ago, more than a few years ago, when I was going through my atheistic phase, if you will, that upon death, it simply lights out. Okay, meaning you die and that's it. You only have this one life. You experience this one life, but it's too amazing, too mysterious, and way too complex to think like that. And it's easy to believe that upon death, it's lights out permanently because when we go to sleep, it's lights out. Like we lose consciousness, and then we wake up. Sometimes we remember our dreams, sometimes we don't. And it's easy to believe that, okay, well, when we die, it's just going to be like going to sleep. We're not going to remember anything, and it's going to be lights out, and it's going to be done. But, you know, understanding the body and understanding how our brains work and going through the neuroscience of this really can help you out, because here's the thing: when we go to sleep, our brain, in order for us to survive in the human form, it has to shift frequencies. Now, our brain during the day, it's constantly shifting frequencies, but in the night, in order for us to heal for our mental health, it shifts into these different frequencies. And even people that say, okay, well, I lucid dream and I control all my dreams all the time, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's not true, because you're never in 100% control. So, yeah, you might practice it and you might do it as an activity, but there's no way that you can control all your dreams all the time. Just because your brain, there is a mandatory shift in consciousness, because our brains go through the different frequencies, and we have to do that because our brain has to dump all this information that we don't use, that we don't need out. And as Dr. Bruce Greyson, he argues that our brain, and many other scientists, they point out that our brain works kind of like a radio antenna. Okay, when you're trying to get on the radio, you're switching dials, you're trying to tune into a radio station. You're getting one radio station at a time. That's exactly how our brain works. Okay, you're tuning in, get one radio station at a time. Now, you're not going to turn it on and get all the radio stations coming at the same time. That's just too much. You're not going to be able to really focus on the song you want to listen to or what have you, because there's going to be too much interference, too much going on. And so our brains are like that. It shifts to one function, right? And it blocks out all this other information. And that's exactly how our brains work. It works to filter out this information. So when we sleep, it's doing a lot of dumping. And also think about memory. And, this is why memory, people's accounts of memory does not hold up in courts unless it's documented, recorded, or there's photographic evidence to go along with that statement. Only because our memory is flawed. Now, you can see a traumatic event happen before you. Police go around doing their police report. There's 50 people. Now, whether it's 5 minutes after the event, 5 years after the event, 50 years after the event, everybody's going to have a different account. Their memory is of it, their recollection of it is going to be different, completely different. Even if people were standing side by side of each other, it's going to be a completely different experience for each and every one, based on the relativity, based on the observer, their experiences, and how they interpreted that information and what it meant to them. What it did to their emotions, their thoughts, processes, and what have you. And this is why memory is flawed. This is exactly why paramedics, when they go, not only are they working on the patient, they have to document everything they do. They can't wait to the end of the call and say, okay, I did this, 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 and this. No, as they're going, they have to do and make these checklists and what have you. That way that because they see so many patients a day, typically, it would be impossible for you to sit there and remember, okay, I did this, did this, did this. To this patient, especially if they got a lot going on, right? So, with our memory, also, a lot of times we can romanticize about certain events, make them more extravagant or dramatize them more than they actually were, whether they're positive or negative memories. And so, once again, our brain shifts into frequencies, and that's how we control mental health. In order to survive, we have to dump information. We have to dump all this knowledge that we encounter, all this energy that we encounter that has stimulated our brain throughout the day in order to ensure our survival. Now let's continue the discussion of death. Now, energy from a life form that has supplied life and which has died is now in a dimension where they may observe the physical world but can only interact with and through energy and no longer through a physical form. So this means energy has the ability to evolve through various life forms, and upon death of the physical life form, this energy connects to all energy at once and simultaneously. And once again, as NDE years claim, this is this infinite and instant state of knowledge, love, understanding, and complete unity that they feel. And remember that death, and throughout the human history, it has been written about death. Death is a part of life. It's a lesson, but a very small part. And a lot of times we over dramatize it as being the end. Sometimes we humans, they feel that is the complete totality of the end. And honestly, don't know where that thought process started. I guess it's when people started doubting religion and doubting the whole everything. Because when you doubt, let's say, an institution, a religious institution, you want to doubt everything about it. Okay, well, this is a lie, this is a lie. If this is a lie, then that means this is a lie, this is a lie, etc. And that's how I processed that too when I started learning about religion. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't fit into our reality. So this has got to be a lie. So I really ignored religion. But then I grew out of that phase and was like, okay, well, everything is a learning point. Everything's a curve. So what is the point of consciousness, infinite consciousness? And that is to grow and evolve. Okay, start with the understanding of science. And in science, there's various different fields. So everything from biology to genetics to anatomy, knowing yourself, knowing your body, neuroscience, knowing how the brain works. You just have to have the basic knowledge of it. And everything from physics to chemistry, okay, the study of the universe, all that, just having the basic knowledge of that. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have a doctorate in it. You don't have to have a degree necessarily. I mean, we are living in the age of information where things are accessible through books, through the internet, what have you. Just be aware of what you're reading, who wrote it, when they wrote it, why they wrote it, because everything's biased. Okay, everybody has a point to sell, right? That way, that's exactly why we take this piece of knowledge and we can enter in our reality, but don't make it the totality of our reality. Just say, oh, okay, well, here's a thought, okay, and then you piece the information together as you bring it along, okay, as it makes sense to you. So, and this brings us back to energy. So, understanding the fields of science, it'll bring you to energy and understanding how energy works, understanding how the body works, how everything connects. And energy is everywhere. It cannot be created or destroyed. This is the first law of thermodynamics. And your body, everything you see, experience in the physical world is made up of energy from your friends, your families, your house, your pets, toys, games, as well as your emotions and your feelings. Now, all this is forms of energy interacting simultaneously at different levels. And think about it like this. If you're in nature, let's say maybe you're in the mountains or in the forest, you're doing camping out and you're around a bunch of plant life, a bunch of wildlife, not around a bunch of people. This is going to have an impact on how you think and how you feel, the different state, how you're going to be vibrations, how your frequencies are set, versus being in a city around a bunch of great infrastructure, around a bunch of human beings that have all these strong emotions that are bouncing off walls and connecting and creating this storm, if you will, of energy. So people, places, and objects, they all have an impact on your energy. And we are all made up of atoms in which that is broken down. You can get quarks, what have you. And even when that's broken down, you see nothing but energy interacting at various levels. Now, the interesting thing about this is, before the, 300 common error, and way back in the day, before common error, that even before the ancient Greeks, they have concluded that, it's such thing as atoms and how energy flows and how energy works. And even they knew that. They just didn't have the scientific method or the ability to prove that. Okay, it was just theorizing based on, hey, this is what I think is going on. This is what reality is to me. Now we have the scientific measurements to do that. Now we went through an age of complete where religion dominated everybody's reality, everybody's way of thinking. Well, not everybody, but pretty much the whole of everybody's thinking, to the point where all that information was thrown out because it either was considered blasphemy or heresy. It did not fit with the institutional powers of religion were trying to convey. Right now, now let's turn to the physical body and the role it plays. So think of your body as hardware of a computer, including your brain. And your brain is just a physical hardware that can be manipulated by energy. And what kind of energy we're talking about? Your infinite consciousness. So think about being plugged into the wall and receiving that AC current. That AC current being your infinite consciousness. So once again, no life force equals no life. In your life force meaning your infinite consciousness. No consciousness in that life form, no life is present. And you must have consciousness for the life to be present. Now think about this. Consciousness, it comes in energy, comes in many forms. Some have higher vibrations, some have lower vibrations. There's a shared understanding through various fields of study and human experiences of the physical world that your physical body tends to vibrate on a much lower level compared to your infinite consciousness, which tends to vibrate on a higher level. And think about it like this. You take a higher vibrating being your infinite consciousness and you trap it into a lower vibrating, okay, it's going to change the vibration. Your vibrations are trying to mesh or sync up, if you will. And these vibrations, they help us, they kind of interfere with us connecting to our higher self. So yes, you are experiencing the life now, but however, it can block you from really seeing the truths. Inner knowledge. That's why they call it inner knowledge, inner being, because it's your internal consciousness, and it's harder to connect with your lower body vibrations. And these vibrations act as interference in the form of sight, sound, experience, etc. Now, once again, it makes it harder to operate and function in the physical world. You're being your infinite consciousness. And some people have awareness, as we can see, they work on their awareness techniques, while it seems other people are just surviving off their limbic reactions and their instincts. Like they have no self-awareness per se. And we all learn and grow differently, and it all depends on how we're connected, our life experiences, and what we need to experience during that time in order for our infinite consciousness to grow. So the physical body is needed for the life force to act through. Okay? And what I mean by life force is your infinite consciousness. Now, another discussion I like to talk about is, twins. That's an easy consciousness of twins. You have twins, whether they're identical or not. You have twins that are born, they're not going to share the same consciousness. In fact, they can be complete opposites, okay? Like different things, be completely clash in personalities, what have you, or they can be identical in the fact of the way they act. That doesn't mean they have a shared consciousness, even though it is known that a lot of twins, they have a deep connection. They can often think what the other person's thinking. That doesn't mean they have the same consciousness, because they're both existing at different points in times and space, and they can go off and have their own experiences, interpret it, bring it back, and say, okay, well, this is how I felt about this is what the emotions are released from this, etc. Now, to talk about clones. Now, clones was something that I was thinking about, and I reached out to a lot of good minds on this issue. I'm like thinking, okay, well, what if you decide to clone yourself? Then what's the deal with that? Is consciousness just going to appear? And it's the same thing as being in that the argument of twin. So let's just say that you decided to clone yourself. So you clone yourself, it turns into like a baby, and then it grows, what have you, and it can even be imprinted with your same. If we have the technology, your memories, your experiences that you have, and we accelerate its growth to where it's now the same age you are. Now, because of your experience and how you experience the world, now that person, just like the twin being shot out, they live in two different points in times in space. So your clone can go off and have a different experience and act and behave the way you necessarily wouldn't and make choices that you necessarily wouldn't. And versus you might go over here and have this and they come back and y'all could be two totally different people. Two totally different opinions, have different religious beliefs, different political opinions, different economic statuses, different social status, etc. So that's another thing. And also with twins, the easy argument because our DNA, a lot of it's similar and shared throughout the world. That even through time. So a lot of people they're putting the pictures of famous people. And like, oh my gosh, here's their doppelganger that existed 200 years ago, and they'll have a picture of somebody that resembles them 200 years ago, like just almost exactly the same person. But that also is true for modern Arab. Like, oh my gosh, I've seen somebody that looked exactly like you. They could have been your twin, right? And that exists out uh, in our modern society, in our modern world right now too. So humans are not the only beings with consciousness. And it's a mistake to think so. Animals have consciousness, even plants have consciousness. And once again, this is not to be mistaken by intelligence, okay? Some people are like, well, you can't make a plant. Is it going to plan its day? Well, no. Okay, that's not what we mean by consciousness. Consciousness is, and there's been so many different studies, and that's a completely different podcast episode to talk about the consciousness of plants. But it is a human flaw to assume that the importance of a human species, such as humans being the center of the universe and the only species that truly matters. Now, humans, they're confidently wrong about everything until we learn better. Okay, so for example, and this is a good example of how consciousness, the term, has changed throughout history. Now, not even 50 to 100 years ago, there were scientists that claimed only adults had the capabilities of having consciousness, not human babies. Human babies, they would argue, do not have consciousness. It's only with adults. And they would get awareness and intelligence mixed up and confused with the term consciousness. And this even got, because based on the times, I think about the movement of the eugenicists and what have you, had all these crazy, bad, negative ideologies going around, sexist and racism, saying, okay, well, women don't have consciousness, or only white males have consciousness, for example. So you have all these different ideas in terms about consciousness. Now, that we've learned and grown from. Well, let's see. We hope so. So, to sum it up, the physical body is an instrument, and the body has the power, because of vibrations, to block out other forms of energy. Now, physical bodies have a much lower vibration than our energies that make up our infinite consciousness, as we discussed. And in order to live a productive life as a life form, reality has to be relevant. Now, think about it like this. If we knew things beyond the understanding of human comprehension, let's say that we knew all the mysteries of life, we knew the meaning of life, we knew the mysteries of the universe, everything about everything, then we would not be able to survive as a human being, okay? And think of it like this. The human mind inside of a bee. So take your human mind, okay? Let's just say that they take you and put you inside of a bee's body, okay? They switch you out with the bee's body, but you still have the mind functions of a human. Now, you would not be able to survive as a bee, okay? Because your life form would be unsuccessful because its capabilities, functions, and potentials are now hindered because you know way too much and you don't know what it's like to be a bee or how to be a bee because you're too busy understanding what life like is for a human. Okay, so with that being said too, and that's exactly where let's take fire ants for example. They're not going to overthrow their queen anytime soon because they're programmed, they're functioned. Okay, they don't think like we do. They don't have this the capabilities to think like a human. Okay, they have one thought, and well, I'm not going to say one thought in life because I'm not going to lie. I don't know what's going on with that species per se, but they're not going to have the human complexities. They're not going to think like a human can, and it would be impossible for an ant to survive if they thought like that. Okay, now consciousness, reality, and life. Okay, it's all about energy. And it comes down to the type of energy. Everything is made up of energy, but energy exists in various forms at different levels. Energy binds
easily to some forms and it can repel and reject other forms, kind of like a magnet. And think of it like this. So, and you know this because all throughout your life, you were connected to certain people. Certain people, you're like, oh, I want to get to know them better. I like them. I'm on the same vibrations. I'm on the same flow as that person, and that's so true. You're vibrating around the same level or on the same level as that person. Versus another person walks in the room and they don't have to be morally objective or a bad person, but you're just like, I don't, I just don't like that person. There's something about them that I just don't like. Maybe because your energies weren't vibrating at the same level. Okay, that's not to say that hey, 10 years ago that was the case, but now you meet that person, you're like, I don't get what I didn't like about them, because maybe your energies are vibrating on the same level now. Who knows? Like people can change their vibration levels. It depends. So, with that being said, it's just like magnetism, right? How we are connected with some people, how we repel and reject other people. It's just a natural process. We're not gonna I wish it was the case because that would make life so much easier if we just loved everybody. I mean, that would, we're attracted, not sexually, but attracted to everybody. You want everybody to be your friend. I mean, that's a great way to think. But in reality, our energy connects and combines. That's what repels us. That's what attracts us to other forms versus repels and rejects other forms. And of course, our good and bad is perspective and a judgmental factor on the observer based on relevance. And I'm not talking about the kind of get into the ethical debate of, um, overall goodness versus badness. Yes, if somebody wants to destroy the planet, that's bad, versus somebody who wants to save the planet is good. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about because religion has really done a number on people's mindsets. Okay, this is good, this is bad. And yeah, you shouldn't go kill people. Yeah, that should be gone without saying, right? But um, let's say that hey, you shouldn't eat this particular thing on this day. If you do, you're a bad person. And I mean, stuff like that is what I'm talking about. It's relevant based on the judgmental factor and perspective of the observer. So, with that being said, think about the people that you find that are easy to get along with and the people that you're drawn to versus the people that rub you the wrong way, and the people that you get an uneasy feeling about. And all that is energy. Once again, it's interacting at various levels. So, with that being said, our higher consciousness, our infinite consciousness, our infinite energy manipulates other forms of energy and is manipulated by other forms of energy. And think about it like this. So, you walk in a room and everybody's smiling, cheering, happy. And maybe you aren't walking in feeling that way, but now because of the atmosphere, it can raise your vibration, so it can raise your mood and make you become more positive. The same can happen in the opposite circumstances. Maybe that you walk into work one day and everybody's just sour, everybody's just in a bad mood, and you walk in all happy, and then that can have effect. That can bring and lower down your vibration levels without you knowing it. I mean, it can happen subconsciously. It just happens because of the energy flowing around you. And unless you set your intention to raise your energy level, then it can have an effect on you. So, to give another example, there's been people that accounted that I've taught with that met people such as the Dalai Lama, and they said just being around them because they intentionally, constantly throwing out this energy vibration field that's completely positive. Like you feel like you're in this positive realm. Like even though you're next to them and they're not interacting with you, you can feel the positivity, and they'll automatically raise your vibrations, your frequencies, and put you in a better mood. And this happens with very spiritual people, people who exhibit and exert a large amount of love for the beings and the people around them. So, once again, we have the ability to manipulate and the ability to be manipulated. We can set our intentions to be positive and we can influence other people's moods, or vice versa. Somebody can come in all sour and they can ruin our mood, or come in positive and elevate us even further. So your body, your environment, your other beings, your surroundings, even material objects are made up of energy. And it's harder to control the driver's seat
and maintain a heightened sense of awareness as a physical life form due to the constant stimulation of energy interacting and influencing simultaneously and constantly, both internally, your depending on your diet, your exercise, how your cells, your circulatory system's working, right? The chemicals that are being processed throughout your body, as well as your external environment, being the temperature, the weather, the people around you, maybe the plant life, the animals, what have you. All that is energy that is around you and interfering with your energy. Okay, it's having an effect, and it's working simultaneously. Now, the point is, our infinite consciousness has the ability to control, to take control, and has the ability to lose control. Now, no one is in 100% of control. Okay, that's just silly talk nonsense. There's practices that you can do to heighten your sense of awareness. Okay, for example, instead of losing control of your emotions, let's say that somebody has an anger problem. Okay, then they can work on that and become self-aware. Okay, yes, I do have an anger problem. How can I control this? How can I control my anger? You feel the anger coming on, then you stop. You take steps to do that. Maybe you stop, you cool down, you get away from the scene. Okay, you get in a dark room and you just breathe. You do these breathing techniques. You're gaining control of the situation. You're not losing control of the situation. And that's for example. So we once again, our consciousness has the ability to take control or lose control. Once again, that's because of constant stimulation and interaction of energy at various different levels, some stronger than others, some vibration influences are lower, and some are higher, etc. Now, once again, energy cannot be predicted, meaning that energy, yes, we can direct it. Okay, think about conductors and what have you. But energy, it cannot be manipulated. I'm sorry, it cannot be predicted in the sense that let's say, for example, a good example is, okay, so we have this electrical line right here, right? Just pretend this is between two power poles, electrical line. Now, it is a federal law here in America under OSHA standards, under the Occupational Safety and Health Act, that an excavator, pretend this is an excavator, can't be more than 10 feet on that line. Because what's happened, even though there's electricity in this line and it's supposed to be staying in this line, depending on the temperatures, the weather conditions, the power would jump from here onto the conductor. Okay, even though there's lines where energy is directed, the power can jump onto this excavator, from the power lines onto the excavator if it's within that 10 feet radius. And that with that conductor, it can create static electricity anywhere from 35 to 65 feet, depending on how big that conductor is. And it would be frying everybody on the ground. And that's why it's now in OSHA standard, hey, if you're working under lines, you can't be within 10 feet of that line. Otherwise, it can cause static electricity, and the workers below you can become victims of being electrocuted. So, with that being said, it cannot be protected. And another example is the scientists, and this is what has developed quantum physics, predicting where those light photons are going to land on a screen, on a pad, right? And that's where we get, hey, is it a wave? Is it a particle? What's going on? It can change. So, energy can be manipulated, though. Forms vary. Think of beings, places, things, etc. City versus nature. Now, conscious experience for any being, physical forms, our physical bodies lock in reality and provide a box that we must live in and think within. In reality, once again, it has to be relevant to ensure the experience and survival of the being. Okay, and that's why we're trapped. And once again, that's why the human brain is based on time and space that has an X amount of potential and access to understanding. Okay, because once again, if we were to know capabilities of beyond our typical comprehension, then that could intrude in on our survival. And just think that if a human living in 2022 was able to understand beyond our life form's capability, whether it's universe dimensions, then it would almost be impossible for that person to live and survive as a human. And therefore, low vibrations and energies of our body, the hardware, contains traps, the software being our infinite consciousness, while in the physical life form.
Now, while we're in the physical life form, some people have can create these connections and abilities in the life form to that allows us to connect, have a somewhat glimpse of other dimensions. And this can happen on various levels, whether you're a practicing meditator, Tibetan monk, um, or maybe you're simply a science fiction writer. Okay, these ideas coming through you. Okay, and you don't necessarily have to be a label of any kind. You can think things and think about like this. And this is what I call, our collective consciousness is people thinking of different creatures, different ideologies. Let's say, for example, unicorn. This people in this culture had a unicorn. This people in this culture had a unicorn, but there was no way for them to communicate that to each other. They developed it simultaneously. It was in the net of this human consciousness where maybe they different possibilities exist, meaning somebody made it up and it was now in this net of human consciousness which connected, and these two life forms happen to pick it up. Or maybe there was unicorns on a different planet in a different system where in your past lives that these people have seen them and they now have memories of it in their infinite consciousness. There could be a number of ways that these people could have came up with this different concept in different points in times and space simultaneously at the same time, without communicating with each other. And that's exactly how our science fiction writers, they get all this information, these different creatures, they come up with these different things, they make stuff up, they think about them and then they write them, they draw them, artists, what have you. They could be recollecting from their infinite consciousness and spilling it out into the physical world of things that experienced or things that they're drawing from the infinite net of human consciousness. Um, Now, our physical experiences as human beings, our emotions, feelings, experiences, and memories, various forms of energy making imprints on your higher consciousness, your infinite consciousness, as we talked about earlier. And once again, that's what it can derive from. So, our human brains, once again, they have the power to override and will it back into reality with lower vibrations, energy, uh, heavy energy to keep you grounded in your physical body. And so we ask ourselves, so what forms of energy waves do you find yourself riding? Now, earlier we talked about dimensions. Now, I just want to get back to that just for a second. Now, dimensions as a humans, we can observe three, but are limited in the dimensions that we can observe and we only experience our lives in the third dimension. Multiple dimensions exist, and we humans do not have the brain capacity or the technology to demonstrate most of the dimensions. Okay, once again, that's like expecting an ant to fathom what it's like to be a human or what have you. So some dimensions can be proven by quantum experience, some through mathematical calculations and equations, etc. So think of dimensions as cogs, once again, turning a mechanism with various cogs being dimensions. And without the cogs, the production just simply would not work. Meaning our reality, the third dimensional world, is one of many, and it could not exist without the others. Complete unity. And this means that we can intersect, and meaning that there's possible that portals can be opened, doorways can be opened to allow other dimensional, interdimensional beings to come through to our dimension, whether we can see them or not. And once again, it's small minded to think that the physical world is the only expression of life, okay? And this is simply a human concept with attachments embedded in atheism as well as religion. And it's funny how close those two are connected, atheism and religion. It's a belief system that blocks out the ability to rationale. And that puts a significance on human thought. And so our brains, they do not have the capability or capacity or even the creativity to think of the possibilities brought forth by these multiple dimensions. And beings from various dimensions may intersect and access our dimensions, like we talked about earlier, accessing through these energy sources and energy access points being geographical locations. Even humans can open doorways to other dimensions, whether intentionally or accidentally, and be affected by these dimensions. There's these other dimensional beings can cling on to human life forces. Also, we have humans that can see glitches in reality. Now, going back to, and what I mean by glitches in reality, meaning something that defines your understanding of reality, that defines logic, that defines the laws of physics that you've seen that happened. And I'm sure if you lived at least 30 years on this planet, that you've seen something that does not fit into your reality that cannot be explained. And for my instance, there's been several things that do not fit the reality that I would just love answers to. So going back to dimensional beings, there's various forms, anything that you can ever think of, plus more, as there are dimensions. So various frequencies, various vibrations. Some are higher, some are lower. And beings of light, beings of darkness, humans can detect and sense them if they practice or have the ability to do it. Some people, like I say, they're born psychic or they're born with these abilities. Others, not so much. They dull their senses, and maybe sometimes on purpose. So whether detected or sensed or not, these beings can and have an impact on humans, providing positive and negative energy. And just because you cannot see, smell, hear, taste, or feel something does not mean it's not there. So, what is the evidence, you may ask? So, we're getting into the discussion of the supernatural or the paranormal versus science. And you got to understand where the human history in order to understand this too. So, human history is, we had this understanding of science. Religion kind of took over and overpowered that, burned all thoughts of science, if you will, and then science had to fight back. I mean, if you think about all the persecutions from Galileo, that had proven, hey, yeah, we're not the center of the universe. The sun doesn't revolve around us. It's not like that. And then was a lot of people were persecuted, killed for their ideologies, even though they were progressing in science. And that's why it's been a clash between the supernatural and science and religion. Okay, and now in our age that we're now experiencing a cohesion of that. Well, it doesn't have to be the supernatural versus science. And now people make a career out of using scientific instruments to prove the paranormal. So, and just about everyone experiences something that they cannot explain, whether it's an experience, an event, a feeling, an influx of knowledge, a sudden enlightenment, or an understanding where you have no idea where this knowledge came from, but all of a sudden you're enlightened. A strong or overbearing gut feeling that urges you into a direction, or simply a glitch in reality. Okay? Now, building a scientific understanding, an understanding of how the world works and these scientific concepts, it can help you root out the nonsense, such as, oh, these papers move by themselves. Okay, well, what caused that? Is there a wind draft? Is the window open? Did the air conditioner turn on? Let's root out the sensible causes. Now, if we eliminate all that and the papers flew off, or let's say a brick flew through the air, and that defies the law of physics, right? So that's going to need a lot more investigation to explain that. So, the history of humans being fooled by the ruling class in order to maintain order, obedience, and control. Okay, they do this in a number of ways. Power relations, any institution ever created, corruption occurs due to power relations. Okay, it's in all governments. It's in all dynasties. It's in all kingdoms. Okay, you have power, you have corruption. It goes hand in hand. Um, and also the case with religion. Okay, power is a force of energy that can be used, can consume the user as well as its victims. And science was often seen as the enemy of the supernatural, providing a legitimate answer to all nonsense. And that's why there's such a class because, and this is the way I believed is I was more of on the scientific side, and I thought all religion was blah. It's nothing but lies. It's dumb. Da 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 da. Da. But now I see the what religion stands for and the teachings in a different light. In fact, I admire the teachings of Jesus, but I don't admire any kind of religious doctrine or anything that says it's this way or you're going to hell or that kind of mentality or ideology. I believe that it was experience and he was a very enlightened individual and he had good teachings. But I do not think other things that he was born out of a ghost and all this and that. So,
Science brings order versus supernatural. It tends to bring out fear of the unknown, and that's why it's also at a clash. Some experiences, some experiences that some claim are indeed lack due to a lack of understanding, a lack of education of the physical world and how it works. For example, human beings being tricked by technology or even introduced to technology if you do not know how things work or the history or of the world, it is much easier to be sold this false reality being tricked. Also, if you ever been to Vegas to one of the magic shows, I mean, even knowing the typical tricks in the book, I mean, it's pretty amazing how they pull off those tricks. I mean, you'll probably end up leaving believing in magic. Like, how did they do that? Um, but anyway, going back to the human history, after being used and abused by religious doctrine and institution, the supernatural, it had a bad, um, just a bad taste in people's mouth. So they got people asking, well, are supernatural events just uneducated people describing certain events and circumstances based on their reality and understanding of life? Is it because they like the understanding of science? And the answer is no. Okay, because throughout history, there have been documentations of beings that we cannot sense that are there that we as humans do not sense with our human senses that have influenced us over time. And even photos and videos, they can be doctored, but there is a way to weed out those falsehoods. And even evidence based on pictures and videos alone are not, for a skeptic, a lot of times they're not enough to be proven sufficient amount of evidence, right? So you can have a video that you just recorded and show somebody and they can still doubt it. But yet they'll believe in some crazy other kind of stuff, right? So science proves that there are various beings and forms of energy that affect humans and the environment around humans. And energy readings through various different instruments, electronic devices used to measure various forms of energy, including light and sound. And just to name a couple of these, you have your thermal imaging, your pressure, your temperature gauges, measuring the temperature of the room, cold depressions when there's no explanation. There's just a cold depression in this area, but all around this is 75 degrees, but in here the temperature drop is 10 degrees lower. Okay, explain that, right? Um, EMF instruments, even Edison tinkered with the communication with the dead. So some of these beings, once again, they have the power to affect humans in extremely negative or positive ways, and can even be traumatic and fatal. An attached entity, energy leaching off your physical life form. So questions that you can ask yourself: Hey, have you ever felt the feeling that you are being watched, and it's in a very creepily way, a very uncomfortable way, but there's no one around? Or do you ever hear things that you cannot be explained, or ever see things that could not be explained? Experience is that you just do not make sense or fit into the law of physics as we know it. So you might be asking, okay, so what are we talking about? Ghost spirits, um, and even the word demon has evolved throughout time. Now it refers to a negative entity, and that's where dark entities. Now demons, these can be interdimensional beings. You don't have to have religious uh, understanding of this, but now we refer in to our modern society as we know it. These are negative. These are bad spirits. These bad entities, dark entities. Whether you want to attack religious rhetoric onto it or not. But back in the ancient days of the Greeks, for example, they used the word demon to mean both good and bad spirits. Now we say good spirits. Now some people don't believe in good spirits; they think everything's just bad spirits. Ghosts, they're here because they're jerks. But I mean, I've done a lot of research on this throughout the experiences in my life. So, from what I understand, you can have a spirit linger here on the planet for a number of reasons. Maybe they're close to their loved ones, and they don't want to let go just yet. They want to watch them and be there for them. Also, maybe unfinished business, or maybe they committed a life of violence and they're not ready to forgive themselves or forgive others for the traumatic events that had occurred into their lives. They can't find peace or closure. And others refuse to evolve. They refuse to go into the light. They want to be the opposite of the light intentionally.
Uh, and so, for example, so there are both positive and good. Uh, whether they're interdimensional beings, whether they're spirits, they're ghosts. They could be mimicking the people who once lived, and we could just have all these. They could just simply be interdimensional beings that have that had mimicked the dead, and have us believing that that's what happens. But in that case, I don't know, because there's quite some evidence on both sides. I mean, they can mimic voices of the living. They can, which is pretty crazy. So moving on, because that's another box of worms that we can open. Um, Physical indicators, meaning that you're being affected by, let's say, a presence that you cannot see, whether they're an interdimensional being, a spirit, what have you. Some beings have the power and the energy to inflict physical harm to beings in the physical world. And this results in red marks or burning sensations, not caused by anything or anyone in the physical world, such as, and there's so much evidence of this. And I even have an experience of this as well. When I went to Savannah, I didn't feel anything, but when I looked on my back, there was a bunch of scratch marks, and I was like thinking, I mean, it looked like a cat went to town on my back, and I would remember being scratched up and down. I mean, I'm usually by myself, and that's how I like it, and I don't rub up against things. I don't like to touch anything, especially, after a world of COVID, you're like bouncing like, oh, I don't want to touch this, I don't want to touch the door handles, what have you. You have that kind of conscious awareness of things. And I've always been somewhat of a germaphobe anyway. But anyway, these other people have gone through and been huge skeptics, but say, oh my gosh, I got a burning sensation on the back of my neck. Like, did something bite me? And then all of a sudden there's this big claw mark back there. And it makes no sense. Like, what could have done that? Also, and there's various accounts with photographic evidence as well as video proof of something happening. They'll video their entire bodies and then go through where it is known where people get scratched a lot, and some it can be provoked, and then suddenly, while filming, they have the scratches. So there was nothing there. They're filming, and then all of a sudden there's scratches right there. Like, that's I don't know how one rejects that evidence, but um, I think that's pretty solid evidence right there. And also feeling sick with nausea, heart, lungs, pinpricks, loss of sensation, numbness. It can even mimic a heart attack. Now, what I've read about this is that some spirits or what have you, they can inflict upon the living how they felt when they were alive or how they felt upon their death, which results in these ailments or a negative entity that can completely wreak havoc in one's immune system or body system. And so the best thing to do is protect yourself, even if you're on one of those apps, okay, that communicate with the dead, where you're using an EMP meter and you're asking questions and it gives you a radio voice response or what have you. That's communication with the dead. So know this, that you need to protect yourself prior and after. Okay, you open the session prior to opening your session. Now, whether you're religious or you're not religious, you can ask the infinite eternal light to protect you, ask God to protect you, Archangel Michael, whatever you believe in, your spirit guide to protect you and to keep you safe through the session, and make it known that, hey, I'm just here to communicate. I don't want you to use my energy. I don't want you to use anything else. I don't want an attachment. And then when you close the session, say, hey, we're done here. You're not allowed to use my energy. You're not allowed to be here. You're not allowed to follow me. You go your way. I'll go my way. The session is closed. And there's a number of ways to do this that you can find online that can help you. Now, because even using the app on your phone, that's just like using an Ouija board. And it wasn't until I was watching a show where they said that, hey, even tempting, the kids were playing around on the app on their phone. And that's what me and my friends used to do. We'd just open the app on our phone and play around. Well, even playing around like that, you're opening yourself up. And you can open yourself up to an attachment unintentionally. And that attachment can be negative, and it can wreak havoc in your life and your well-being. So, and you can also cleanse yourself, practice channeling, increase the communication with your inner self. Intent is everything. Cleanse your body, your mind, through a variety of practices.
always through intentions. Ask the light to cleanse you once again and away your negative energy, any negative energy. Command that negative energy leave you. And once again, state to all beings out loud that you are in control of your body and nothing has permission to attach itself or enter your body or use your energy or your life force. Remember that you are living life in the physical world, so you're a lot stronger than these things that cannot be seen or heard per se. So practices, and these are practices including raising, getting to know your inner consciousness, getting to block out all that energy, and healing yourself. To maintain a state of awareness, to increase your awareness. Practices include breathing exercises. Now, why breathing exercises? Because breathing is an automatic function. And so when you purposely take control of your breathing, what you're doing is you're purposely taking control of your body, and that limits all those wild thoughts that go off. So if you're a beginner in meditation and you find yourself, well, I'm so bored sitting in this room because all I'm thinking about is next Tuesday. I wonder what Tiffany's doing today. I wonder what blah, blah, blah. What I'm gonna eat next week, what's for lunch, what I'm gonna do when I get home. All these different things are going through your head, right? Because that's natural. Our brains are these function on these frequencies, right? So, and breathing exercises, taking control. And when you take control, you're thinking about breathing and you're not thinking about these other things. So it's an access. And that's why, when you're first, especially when you're first doing meditation, these breathing exercises help you get into meditation. And simply what meditation is self reflection. And you want to limit all sources of stimulation, meaning sight, sound, etc. Now, a lot of people use the trickling of water. That's okay, but you don't want to listen to some hardcore music or have a bunch of light. A lot of people get in dark rooms and put out the lights, if you will, to limit the senses. They get away from other people, other energies. That way, they can focus on their own energy. And also, a way to elevate your consciousness is seeking out knowledge, experience, and learning. Okay, because when we do this, we're just opening up our understanding a little bit more than it was just a minute ago or the day before. Also, chakra healing. Now, out of the 7 chakras, and a lot of people say there's a lot more than that, and that's fine. But the 7 chakras that you concentrate on, the reason why they have 7 is because it's harder to concentrate on thousands than it is 7. So you start with these vibrations, these hums, and you think about the energy coming in, healing your body, and leaving out and expelling that negative energy and healing these body systems. And you just do it in layers, starting at the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Okay. And also, other people use stones, crystals, incense. Can't say I've ever used any of those, but a lot of people swear by them. Sounds and vibrations also form. Now, all these have in common is their practices designed to set intentions, to focus the consciousness, to link to the energy that is the higher self, your infinite consciousness, and detachment from current physical realities. So, out of this long session, in conclusion, you are special because you are part of this higher consciousness, this eternal consciousness, this infinite consciousness that does not die upon physical death. Okay, your life is special because you are you based on your circumstances, and this is why not everybody's going to win the lottery. Not everybody's going to be an all-star player. Not everybody's going to be this or that. Okay, you're meant to live the life as you and be grateful for every minute of that because you're not supposed to be this or that or the other. You're supposed to be exactly what you're doing in your focus right now. So, no one else has the energy makeup you do, and therefore your consciousness is unique and special. And our higher conscious selves, our consciousness is made up of energy and is also influenced by energy. Once again, it can repel, reject, or absorb and incorporate other types of energy, whether they're positive or negative. Now, the physical world is a dimension of physical beings and objects that our higher consciousness takes part in. And while in the physical world, the dimension, our higher consciousness can only access the potential and capabilities provided by our physical bodies to experience life relevant to the observer of said life force. Now, everything is energy. Your body, your consciousness, objects, the environment, everything that makes up your surroundings. There are various types of energy, and some we can sense in our physical life forms other we cannot detect. Everything is energy reacting simultaneously at various levels and stages while with other energies. And we are observers, higher conscious thinkers that can manipulate this energy through intent, through our intentions. And awareness helps build our skill and our control level. So, dimensions, they're home to other beings, including your higher consciousness. And think about it like this: your infinite conscious is much like, okay, so your infinite conscious in your physical body. Okay, compare that to you playing a video game and creating a virtual character. Okay, you, as that virtual character, are going to do what that character takes in order to survive based on its circumstances, right? Same thing. Jumping into the physical world is much like choosing to play a character in a video game. It is easy to tune out all the surroundings of your physical world when you are in that virtual world, and take this and apply it to your consciousness and the dimensions. Now, the physical world is a temporary state of existence, it's not a permanent one, meaning that once we perish from our physical reality, our higher consciousness is shot up into another dimension. Okay, just always look for the light. And the part of you that never dies, and yeah, the part of you that was human, such as the emotional being that you were, the person with judgments, with particularities, with favorites, um, with likes and dislikes, is no longer around. However, the energy that that person that you were is imprinted into your infinite consciousness. And this is something that you can carry with you. You can carry positive and negative energy with you, and that's something that you might have to work out through your next life forms or what have you. Well, with all that being said, this comes to an end to the podcast. I hope that this was helpful to some of you guys. And if you ever need to reach out, you can find me at www.higherconsciousthinker.com, or you can shoot me an email at higherconsciousthinker@gmail.com. Okay? Well, hope you guys had a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.